You've made a decision about someone in the first 100 milliseconds of meeting them, and the worst part is you're probably wrong. Not sometimes wrong. Wrong almost every single time in ways that matter. We think we're logical. We think we size people up carefully. We think we notice the truth about who someone is. But the brain doesn't work that way. In fact, your brain is playing a dangerous game with you right now, one it's been playing for thousands of years, and it's winning. Here's what happens. Someone walks into a room. Your brain doesn't gather information neutrally. It doesn't wait. It doesn't think, let me collect data. Instead, it fires. In that first glance, before a single word is spoken, your brain has already made predictions about intelligence, trustworthiness, competence, even whether this person will matter in your life. Then something remarkable occurs. Everything that happens after becomes evidence for that first guess. Your brain literally rewires reality to prove itself right. This is why the person who makes a great first impression can reveal themselves to be fundamentally dishonest, and you'll still trust them. This is why the quiet person who doesn't shine immediately might be brilliant, but you'll never find out. This is why people stay in relationships with the wrong person. Why bad employees never get a fair chance, and why you might be underestimating yourself right now. The mechanism behind this is called the halo effect, but that's not the whole story. It goes deeper. When you meet someone, your brain activates something called the primacy bias. Primacy bias means that the first information you receive about a person weighs more heavily in your mind than everything that comes after. Not by a little, by a lot. Imagine you're receiving information like a scale, and the first piece of information you get is dropped from a helicopter. Everything else is dropped from a hand. That's the difference in weight. What makes this worse is that your brain immediately starts looking for confirming evidence. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Once you've formed an impression, you unconsciously start noticing things that fit that impression and ignoring things that contradict it. If you think someone is confident, you'll notice their assured handshake and miss the nervous habit they have. If you think someone is unintelligent, you'll remember the one thing they got wrong and forget the complex problem they solved. Think about social media. You follow someone, they post a beautiful photo of themselves traveling, and suddenly you have an image of this person, adventurous, interesting, living a full life. Days later, they post something bitter about relationships, something insecure about their appearance, something revealing about their actual life. Does that change your impression? Rarely. You've already encoded them as the travel person, the interesting person. Everything else becomes a footnote. This happened to Emily at her new job. On day one, she was nervous. The first meeting with her team, she stammered slightly when introducing herself. Nothing dramatic, just normal nervousness. But her boss, who'd never met her before, immediately categorized her as unsure, less competent. That first impression became the lens through which every subsequent action was interpreted. 3 months later, Emily had solved 2 major problems and contributed genuinely to strategy. But her boss still saw her as the nervous person who wasn't quite ready. The bias was set. The evidence was filtered. Emily eventually left because she felt underestimated. She was, but not because of what she actually did. Because of what happened in the first 100 milliseconds. This isn't your fault. It's how the brain evolved. When early humans encountered a predator or a potential threat, there was no time for careful analysis. The brain that hesitated died. The brain that made quick judgments and acted survived. Your rapid-fire first impression system kept your ancestors alive. But now that system is running on ancient hardware in a modern world. The neuroscience reveals something fascinating. When you meet someone, your amygdala, the part of your brain that handles fear and snap judgments, lights up immediately. It's fast. It's powerful. It doesn't require conscious thought. But here's the thing. It's also incredibly crude. It's making judgments based on facial features, body language, tone of voice, and context. It's not assessing actual character. It's assessing threat level and status, and it's almost always making mistakes. Research from Princeton University found that people make judgments about a face's trustworthiness in less than 1/10 of a second. What's wild is that giving people more time to look at the face doesn't significantly change the judgment, it just makes them more confident in a potentially false conclusion. You don't get smarter about people by looking longer. You just get more stubborn. Here's where it gets worse. These first impressions actually shape the person you're meeting. If someone thinks you're confident, you'll unconsciously become more confident around them. This is real. Your behavior shifts to match their expectation. This is called the Pygmalion effect, named after the mythology. If you meet someone expecting them to be cold, your own nervous energy will make them actually seem cold. You created the very thing you predicted. So what do you do about this? First, when you meet someone important, whether it's a potential partner, colleague, or friend, deliberately schedule a second and third meeting before forming your final impression. This isn't about being nice. It's about being accurate. Your brain needs repetition across different contexts to actually understand someone. One interaction is data. 3 interactions across different situations begin to approach truth. Second, actively look for disconfirming evidence. When you've formed an impression, pause and ask yourself, what haven't I noticed about this person? What would the opposite of my judgment look like? What moment did they show something different from my initial impression? This forces your brain to actually collect data, rather than just confirm what it's already decided. Third, separate the person from the context. You met them on a bad day. You met them in a formal setting where they were nervous. You saw one photo or one moment. Ask yourself, how many different contexts have I actually seen this person in? The answer is usually one. One context, one moment, one data point, and you've decided who they are. Fourth, delay important decisions about people. Don't decide if you trust someone after day 1. Don't decide if they're smart after one conversation. Don't decide if you want them in your life after one impression. The decisions that matter most deserve more information, and finally remember that people are different around different people. The version of someone you see depends partly on who you are to them. The confident CEO might be genuinely anxious around their spouse. The quiet person at the party might be brilliant and expressive in intimate relationships. You're never seeing the whole person. You're seeing a fraction. Act accordingly. Here's the deeper revelation. The person you're most wrong about might be yourself. You formed an impression of yourself years ago. Smart, awkward, funny, untalented, charismatic. That first impression, often created by a parent, a teacher, or a single moment, has been running your entire filter system about yourself ever since. You notice evidence that confirms it. You dismiss evidence that contradicts it. You've become an expert at proving your own first impression right. The question isn't whether first impressions fool you. They do. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Will you remain imprisoned by that first glance, or will you learn to see again?